For everybody who's just joined, this is Saskia Tidey, British sailing team, 49er FX. Welcome, Sas. Thank you very much for turning up and helping us.
No worries. Thank you for having me.
So I'll just turbo through. So this is Saskia and her a little first slide around the background of where Sas came from.
Yeah, so hi, my name is Saskia Tidey and I sail the 49er FX for Great Britain with Charlotte Dobson. We were supposed to be going to the Olympics last year in Japan, but that is obviously been postponed now to this year. So the show goes on. We are currently in Vila Moura in Portugal, just doing some training here. Hopefully we will get to Lanzarote to see the rest of the fleet at some point, but we'll have to see how that all goes. So yeah, thank you, Hugh, for having me here tonight. I'm hoping I can give you a little insight into how Charlotte and I have put together our team and an insight into our journey so far.
So the second slide I've got up is Rio 2016 post game. So you had sailed for Ireland in the first in your first Olympics in Rio, and then you decided that you were going to sail with Charlotte Dobson. A new campaign, a new challenge, a new partnership. So just give us a really quick summary of what you how you went about that.
Luckily, Charlotte and I were able to join up after Rio. We both wanted a new challenge, and the 49er was going to be at the next Olympics. So the two of us joined up in 2017 and sort of put together a plan of how we thought we were going to, challenge for the gold medal in Japan come 2021. So really what we've done for the last 4 years is sort of challenge ourselves against the rest of the world and review and update where we are in our campaign. And it's been going really well, actually.
So on this slide, you mentioned your team, and you mentioned Olympic Games venue. So just talk to us about that briefly. Obviously, that's quite influential relative to your physiology.
Yeah. So when we first started our campaign, we were trying to understand the venue that we would be sailing in for the Olympic Games. At the time we had been kind of told quite a few times it's going to be quite a big, wavy, windy venue. And we, for us, that was going to be brilliant because I'm 6'2", Charlotte's a lovely, tall, slender girl. I've got muscles for days, and we thought we'd be able to, really challenge the rest of the world and being the fastest boat in the fleet. And we've certainly proved that a number of times. So, that Japan, you can get anything there really, but they are the days that if you're going to pull out of the bag, you need to be ready for. And we thought, for us, that they were our days.
So windy, big seas, really good. So this is the next slide. Who are you as a team? How do you learn? What do you bring to the team, and what are your values? The piece about learning is interesting.
Yeah. So, well, I certainly have learned from Olympic campaigning that being in the British sailing team, there's a huge group of us, and everyone is so different, and they've all learned from very different backgrounds, but everyone learns quite differently, and that certainly challenged me when I first came on the team of, how do I get the best out of myself, and how do I learn the quickest and most effective way I can in order to just learn things really, really quickly. And when Charlotte and I first started sailing together, we had to understand and figure out how, as individuals, we learn information. And for me, I'm quite a practical person. In the boat, I need to feel things to understand it. I need to have quite a visual review of sailing. Lots of video really helps me to refresh what I already know or learn something new. and having discussions about things without having experienced feelings for me is quite difficult. Whereas Charlotte is an incredibly intelligent sailor, and she's a very experienced sailor as well. So, and she's great at speaking in the moment, whereas I sort of sit back and have to take it all in. So just understanding your partner and not seeing it as a bad or a good thing, seeing it as it's brilliant that you're two very different people, how you learn, and understanding then how you talk to each other in the boat and work through problem solving. That's the most important thing.
So that's so for all you guys who are, sailing as in a team in your 29 or your 420 or your fever, it's super important that you, when you come together and you sail together, you realize where one might have some strengths, others might not have some strengths, and actually that can combine really well. So so it's well worth trying to make sure that you're pretty thorough with your, analyzing your performances, so that when you do get a chance to come and sail in a two-person boat, you can pull that together and make a team. And as you said here, Sass, it's about the values you have as a team, and sort of, and what do you mean by values? Maybe some of the guys might not have heard that before.
Oh, so we have a few values which to us mean they're little phrases that we commit to. So, for example, like we update them quite often, but one was like together through the hard times, and that was something where you have a few sentences that both of you have agreed to, that during when it's not going very well, you can look at and go, we can't let each other down, this is what we've agreed to. Or even when it's going really well, a value might be keeping your head down and not getting distracted by a result. And they're really important things to talk to your partner about before you go into a very pressurized scenario like a race week, because you both need to remember what you've set out to achieve to start with. So that's what we use as in our debriefs or reviews, to come back to, were we the people who we said we were going to be? That's what we use it for.
So that's, it's good to get to hear and understand a little bit about how an Olympian goes about making sure they've got the right team and who you are as in the team. So we'll just flick onto this next slide, which is about the super strengths. And the super strengths is a concept that some of the guys might have heard of before. But what are your super strengths and how are they important for Tokyo?
So, well, our super strengths to start with were very much sort of, once it got to 12 knots in the 49er FX, we were certainly a team that liked to pull the vang and just, get the boat moving quick. And upwind, we were just on fire in comparison to the rest of the world. And we very much kind of relied on that. And during a week of racing, where you get to sail in that you actually and that is what you hang on to for the whole week, knowing that you're not going to waste those days on big scores. And since we started sailing, it's been 4 years now, we've been working on all the other wind strengths in order to bring that up to a level which you never feel too vulnerable. And so our super strength for sure to start with was heavy winds, speed, and wavy conditions.
And what do you think's helped you bring other skills up to being strengths that were maybe not so strong before?
So we have obviously with times gone by where it's easier to move around, we chose venues to train in that we were pretty much guaranteed to get sub 10 knots to sail in order to get the maximum hours we can in those conditions. And then the other thing we did was get a specialist in those conditions who we trusted and relied on as someone who could say, this is how I think the boat should look like in this condition. That's your role, Charlotte. This is your role. and we were given some form of a structure to work with, because we felt quite lost at times in those light wind conditions. And I think it's a big thing to be able to sort of own up to vulnerable in a certain wind strength, but you know that you it's not wrong to do that. The mistake is not to tackle it, and that's the bit that takes bravery. And we sort of had to put the windy weather sailing a little bit on pause for a while and trust that that was in our, you know, in our kind of pocket, that when we revisited it, it wouldn't be too far away from what we can do best.
So maybe that's a good chance for us now to, you know, in a little bit earlier, the guy said, oh, strengths for the people who sail in Lymington would be tides and shifty conditions and maybe knowing sea breezes. So you know, that's where we might be seeing our strengths as Lymington sailors. So Sas, this next slide's about becoming aligned. So for the guys who are in their 420 team, for the guys who are thinking of, you know, they've been a terror sailor, fever sailor, and coming together. You've talked quite a bit about some of these bits, but I was interested in one of these pieces here about, you know, the common language. When we talk sailing, it's quite technical language. So how do you guys keep it super simple in the boat?
Well, I mean, we keep it super simple in the boat. We've very much worked over the last 4 years to minimize conversations whilst racing and try and find some words that represented almost a meaning or a sentence. So for example, in the boat when we're sailing in, say it's 10 knots, there's a lot of movement, body weight movement required to keep the boat heel nice and flat. And it'd be very easy to end up talking a lot about where you need to be. Whereas we've come up with a number system, which if I need Charlotte to move weight in, I can say like 1, which is a position in the boat she directly moves her weight to. And that for me, I know where she is. So it's very important for us to have a language between us, that we have one word that represents many, and that cuts down a lot of confusion in if you were to have a conversation in a very high pressured situation and the other person is trying to understand what you mean. We never let that situation arise. So once we're racing, the conversation, if there's a conversation, there's something not right, and it needs to be dealt with either on the coach boat or on the shore, but it's not very helpful when you're sailing. So
a quiet boat in your situation is a pretty good and happy boat. So for the guys who are sailing 29ers, have we got some 29er sailors on? Hopefully you can sort of associate how hard it is to try and sail the boat, because it's pretty tippy, and making sure you can know where each other is at is pretty important. For those who are going from terrors to fevers, maybe it's worth thinking about how you communicate. So Rafi can be in the right place relative to Ben or whatever when you're hiking out. If one's super hiking out and then the boat comes over on top of you, how's that going to work? You know, so that's a really good tip and a really good opportunity.
I think the funniest one we've come across is we were really unaligned on the word wait, because for a week I thought Charlotte, when she said wait, meant don't move, wait. What she was trying to say to me was wait, as in get your weight out. And for a few days this caused total confusion, as you can imagine, being two opposite. And that's just a really good example of a common phrases, common languages that you both know mean something
totally different. So when your mum and dad say wait now, then they don't mean just stay where you are and stop. They mean lean out the boat. Yeah. Or something like that. Yeah. Cool. So what this next slide is all about is trying to just sort of get an impression or something that's important for the guys to understand of how much time and and what you think is important about roles and routines. Guys, let me just ask a question to the guys. So in the 420 sailors we got on the call, so how have you worked out the roles? So maybe in the McGill household, how have you worked out the roles with your teammate? Oh dear, all getting shy now. So maybe it's a bit more of a generic question on the chat. So how have you guys gone about working out who does what roles and what routines in the boat? 10 seconds. And, how have you gone about it? Have you brainstormed it? Have you do you just get in the boat and let it happen? How do you go about working out who does what exactly, when and why? Oh, there's not much so far. Come on. In the Wingate household, which boat do you sail in the Wingate household?
We sell oppies.
Oppies.
Cool.
So in the oppie, when you're selling your oppie, then you've got a coach working with you the next time you go on the water, hopefully, which will be hopefully in February. So how do you know what you're going to do and what the coach is going to do? What do you do at the beginning of the day to work out who's going to do what?
I'm not really sure.
So do you have a do you have a little call or a little chat on the beach before you go on the water?
Not really, no.
Ah, who's your coach? I've got a bone to pick with them. Sas, what do you do to make sure you're aligned each day you go out in the water?
So for us, it's really important to maybe have a little look at the weather forecast. It might give us an idea whether it's going to be 20 knots or 5 knots. And then we can kind of then decide what some of the really important things of the day might be, whether that is how we think we might set up the boat, what sort of movement we're looking for in the boat. And then it depends what sort of racing day it's going to be. Is it offshore wind? Is it going to be shifty? That's going to be quite a big day for Charlotte, keeping her head out. So my job on the boat is to make sure the boat feels really nice and quiet and not distracting, and feed her in the information that she might need to make decisions. And
there's a lot going on, is what I'm hearing here. A lot in the briefing of the day.
Yeah, so there's a lot of preparation that we try and do before we get a massive surprise.
So when you're talking there, what I'm hearing is a lot about pre-organized, this is what I do each time I go sailing. So for the guys who are getting oppie sailors, terror sailors, fever sailors, lazy sailors, 29er sailors, 420 sailors, sounds to me like that should they be right in taking away that repeating the same roles and routines is important? Yeah. Why is that important, Sas?
I think it's really important because if you have a routine and you can rely on that routine, then the days where you maybe don't feel 100% you, or feels you're quite under pressure, or you feel just a little bit not yourself, they're very easy things to, if you have them written down, to go back and remind yourself, or your coach can have them written in the boat, and they're just a little checklist. And the other thing is, if you are someone who likes to write notes for the different wind strengths, if it's definitely going to be no more than 10 knots that day, well, there's probably 3 pages that you don't need to look at of notes for all the other wind strengths. So that's a lot of things off your plate.
Yeah. And so, and for us as our top oppie sailors, and lazy sailors, all the single-handed sailors, when we talk about roles and routines, the routines are, how we tack in the different conditions, how we jibe in the different conditions, how we do our boat handling in different conditions. It's still important for you guys as single-handed sailors. You really know that your tack is the same routine you go through for your tack and your jibe. I mean, Sas, how many times today did you tack and jibe? And must have done some tacking practice today, right? Oh, we lost her. We might have frozen on Sas. Can everybody else hear me? Hopefully they can. So one of the things that Sas was really keen to try and stress to me when we were talking earlier was the importance of what we do on the boat and repeating it, because when we do things and repeat them, what ends up happening is that we end up being able to make sure that our brains have an easier time of remembering stuff. So roles and routines are really, really important. I'm just going to click on to the next bits and sort of go through the next bits that are useful, and we'll try and obviously get Sas back online when she gets a chance. Oh, here she is. Here she is.
I'm back.
That's right. So
Yeah,
we've just moved on to your staying aligned one, which is trying to make sure is sort of the keeping everybody together. Once you put a team together, then how do we keep it together and how you make sure you become super successful?
Yeah, so staying aligned, which basically means staying together and having the same ideas together. So there it says checking expectations. So I think that one's very important for us when we go training to a camp, that Charlotte and I have both discussed what expectations we have for that camp, because it's very easy for two people to have very different ideas of what their week's going to look like, and that can lead to a lot of confusion. So our expectations of the week might be, at the end of this week, boat handling, we're going to want to see 8 out of 10 tacks look really good, and maybe the other person would have thought, well, I'd be happy if we saw 5 out of 10 tacks. And it's really important to meet in the middle, so neither of you are disappointed.
So that's really crucial for you guys, you young guys, because what I'm hearing a lot of what Sas talking about is how simple they're trying to keep it. This game of sailing can be super, super complicated, but just making sure that you and the person you're sailing with knows that at this regatta we're going to try, and it might be that we come out of the regatta and it's all about the boat handling, as Sas says, and it also might be that you want to deliver a result. But if you're not clear on that at the beginning, then that can lead to problems.
Yeah. And the other thing which we find really, really helpful is always checking in every month with our current plan and make sure that we're on track. Like you guys, you must have a few little goals for the season on how you're getting better. And it's really important not to just write them down at the beginning of the season and then look at them at the end and hope that they've changed or it's worked. It's super important with your coach or with your mum and dad and the people who are around you and supporting you, that everyone's checking back in and seeing how your progress is going, because it's really rewarding to do that, but it's also really important to make sure you haven't missed anything.
So maybe we could get the guys to give us an idea. So 10 seconds, what's your goal you're currently working on when you get a chance to get back on the water, or even now? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. On, Rafi, Mr. Seddon.
That's a good one.
What's the goal? What's your goal you're working on? Fitness from Jacob Anderson. Okay, that's good. That's Sas's real speciality, fitness. To go as fast as you can from Ed. Nice, excellent. What about the McGill household? What are you working on in your campaign? What would you like to be better
at? Like good communication.
Oh, that's a good one.
Or maybe Sas can talk to that now. That would be really good.
That's a really good one. Yeah,
Tactics.
Good communication is very, very good for a double-handed boat. I mean, even now we are still working on it every single day. And I think maybe where you start with it is if you sit down with your teammate, and if you were to do, if you can write down from the moment you get to the race course and work your way around the race course on a piece of paper and kind of have a discussion of what you might expect to be saying during those times, it'd be really interesting to know if both of you would expect the same conversation to be happening, or a description of something on the boat. I think a lot of the time in the boat when we're talking about like I said earlier about the wait out or wait, don't move, it's really easy for that to crop up and become such a big issue when it's actually very controllable.
So for you guys, obviously one of the ways, Sas is a professional athlete. Sas spends a lot of her time and energy focusing on this stuff. and you guys writing stuff down might at the moment be a little bit over the top because you've been spending so much screen time, but you can use a phone to record it into, and do just sort of a bit of a think through and walk through, even now whilst you're not sailing, to try and get yourself, we talk about this, we talk about that, I ask for this, or I ask for that, and actually now while you're at home, not doing so much, it might be quite good for you to, maybe use a virtual regatta little race to chat with your teammate or something, to just talk through a situation you've worked through.
Another one which might be quite good is you can do it on Zoom or virtually, is kind of going through a pre-start, who's doing the clock, who's counting down the time, who's checking the committee boat. These are roles that two people in the boat have to keep track of, all the different things. And for example, in our boat, we both do the timer for the 5-minute gun, but then it's my job to be keeping track of the time, helping Charlotte build a picture around her, and while she's focusing on all the little boat maneuvers and keeping our boat on the line. And that's something you can definitely probably practice on Zoom.
Good tip. I like that. I really like that. So that's quite a nice way of linking into this slide about maintaining momentum. So one of the things that's really important is communication. You've been really interesting chatting about the planning and the reviewing and being organised and routines. So once you start being successful, how do you maintain that?
Oh, that's a good question. What we've tried to do is, every time we think we've made a gain or a big leap forward in our progress, and we've seen that in a fleet, it's really important for us to sit down with our coach and write it down and kind of lock it in so that it's ours, and we can never lose why it was good. And really what we've tried to do is tackle we call it the low-hanging fruit, so the things that are in our campaign which really make us vulnerable. So Charlotte and I for a little while found some jibing in windy weather quite hard, and we'd come around the top mark, we'd be leading, we'd be meters ahead of everyone else. We'd get halfway down the run and we'd throw in a jibe, and just through a foot being out of place and not having a very good solid routine, we would have a capsize, and we have lost a lot of races which we should have won by miles from a boat handling error. So for us it was a very, very vulnerable thing in our campaign, which we have tried to very much focus in on and go away and tackle that. And now we're in a position where it's no longer a vulnerability. It's something which we're not the best of the world in it, but we hope now it will never stop us from winning a regatta and winning a race.
So it's really good to see how much detail you focus in on those sort of things. So I think basically this is kind of the last slide, but one, and it's just to kind of summarize to everybody about how it is and what it is that's been the definition of you being dominant. And for me, the really nice things about this was the bit about problem solving, and you just really you sort of described that really nicely there. But and also about the second point down. Can you just very briefly just run us through about that whole piece around positivity and robust and respect? Because I think that's one of the things, that the respect that you have for the person you sail with is super important.
Yeah, I mean Charlotte, I respect Charlotte. She's one of the most important people in my life. I have to give a lot of credit to her for allowing me to be able to pursue this dream that I have, and the same for her. She relies on me to turn up every day and give everything I have so that we both can be the best in the world. And I think respect, we both have this underlying respect that you feels like a little safety net that you can never fall through it. There's going to be some days where you're both challenged really hard and you're both disappointed in either your roles or, you know, together there might be a bit of a clash, but it's all through, you must remember at the end of the day that the respect's still there, and the only reason those things happen is because you're both trying everything to make it right. And that's something which makes a partnership really not easy, but it makes it, you know, really enjoyable and creative to work in, and it makes you inspired and motivated to get up in the morning, and you like you care for your brothers and sisters or your mum and dad or your best friend. You know, when you do an Olympic campaign where I am now, the person I sail with they are a very big part of my life, and when you guys are learning this at young stages, it's really important to have that respect for the person you're sailing with, because you'll learn something from them and they'll always learn something from you. And yeah, hopefully you can take that into whatever you do in past your sailing careers and in other teams you get into.
Well, I'd like to just make a big thanks to Sas for putting the time in. This was kind of, I think that was the one, yeah, basically. So this was the last bit was about trusting routines. You've mentioned a lot about doing the same routine and doing the simple things well. I suppose now is a great opportunity for the guys to have a chance to ask any other questions they've got about A, Olympic campaigning, B, how to be successful, C, how to communicate, and D, how to be dominant. Any questions, any thoughts, anybody? If not, that's fine. It's been a long day at screen time, I'm figuring. So thank you very much, Sas, for all your energy and enthusiasm. Oh, we've got a bit of chat here. Thank you very much and good luck in Tokyo. There was another thing. Oh, here we go. Do you ever argue when things aren't going well as you want? That's a great question.
I mean, we're all humans. Everyone gets a bit cranky now and then. We've all had moments, but again, back to the respect, there's always the underlying, you know, you're tired, and there's moments where you're tired and frustrated and things aren't going your way, and it's very easy sometimes to feel a bit cranky, but at the end of the day, we are best mates now, and yeah, we're very lucky to have each other. So
you're only ever trying to do your best, right?
Yeah, we're only ever pushing it as hard as we can.
Oh, and Harry West says, how do you celebrate?
Oh, that's a great question.
How do you celebrate?
How do we celebrate? Well, normally we celebrate on a podium, and we can give our competitors a big hug, but I don't know how that's going to happen these days. So
here we go. Here's a little picture of celebrating in the boat.
Yeah, well, that was when I had a big injury and came back after a few months of rehab. That was the first day back in a boat. So that was celebration.
See if I can. And here's another little celebration. This is another regatta success.
Yeah, that was, we won the Europeans that year. Oh yeah, there was a bit of champagne that time. Yeah. Good luck, guys. Enjoy it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sas. All the best to Tokyo.
Hope you get back soon.
Thank you.
Very good. Cool. All the best, everybody, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you, Saskia.
Thank you.
No worries. Thank you for having me.